Hey, there you are. Welcome back to a brand new episode of Last Call Baseball, number 150. I'm Dorian. You know, when you turn on the news, what I love about the local news, the national news, always full of feel-good stories. Just like the Philadelphia Phillies announcer, Greg Murphy. Pittsburgh Pirates were in Philadelphia. And right before the game started, Greg Murphy was talking about the Pittsburgh Pirates outfielder Connor Joe. And Greg Murphy said something to the effect of, I know we're not supposed to root for the other team, but this guy, Connor Joe, I'm rooting for him because he battled back from cancer and he was an inspiration to me. And I was like, that's a beautiful thing to say before a baseball game. Apparently, Greg Murphy was fighting hairy cell leukemia, which is a type of blood cancer. That sounds very scary. Thankfully, Murphy has recovered. And now Greg Murphy is involved with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, I believe in the Philadelphia area, raising money for research for, I'm sure, all types of cancer. So tip of the hat to Greg Murphy. Staying in the National League East are the New York Mets, the hottest team in baseball, starting out 0-5. We're never winning a game in 2024. Now they're sitting pretty. 10 wins, 8 losses, third place in the National League East. 3 weeks into the season, that's a good thing. The New York Mets, I think, are supposed to finish, in fourth place. But the Marlins are looking bad. I certainly didn't appreciate the Mets going to Atlanta and taking 2 of 3 games from them. I mean, and that last game, what was that, it was like 10 days ago. The Mets just rocked the Braves. A good old butt whipping, 16-4. I was like, I'm not watching it. I'm not watching this. You know what I love watching? College baseball. I told you I'm a convert. I'm now watching Major League Baseball. I'm watching college baseball. I saw the Wofford Terriers play the FIU Panthers. The Terriers, the number 1 offense in the country. Highest batting average, highest team batting average in college baseball. 346, tied with the University of Virginia. And they're averaging 11 runs a game. The best in all of college baseball. And I was like, how did I not know that? They play small ball, playing station to station ball. They never hit home runs. They'll hit singles, doubles, they'll steal, they'll bunt. It's like, is this the 1980 St. Louis Cardinals? It's entertaining to watch. It's so different from how a lot of college baseball teams play and their philosophy. They stick to it. It works as a formula. They keep winning boatloads of regular season games, and they'll hopefully this year they'll translate all those regular season wins into some tournament wins. I certainly want to thank Jonathan Mayer and Coach Carson Whitson, who had the pleasure to shake their hands and meet. If you remember, Coach Whitson was my guest on episode 140, and yeah, it was great talking to him for a few minutes and telling him that I'm a convert now to college baseball, and he certainly thinks it's a wonderful sport and it's very chaotic because you're never out of the game. That's what I love about college baseball. Even a 7-run, 8th inning lead, not safe. Not safe. Another cool story is, I didn't know this. Do you guys remember El Duque Hernandez, the 4-time World Series pitcher with, he won 3 World Series titles with the New York Yankees. He won 1 the Chicago White Sox. And now one of his sons, or maybe his only son, I don't know, but his son, Orlando Hernandez, is also a relief pitcher for FIU. And Hernandez ended up pitching, I think, like four innings in relief. Very passionate. He throws the ball hard. And if you squint your eyes, you can see Orlando Hernandez is like dad. He's the body build, the demeanor. Ultimately, Wofford won in not extra innings. Wofford won in extra innings, 6-4. It's like when you're a kid and you're going to your favorite fast food joint, and you're like, oh, let's supersize it. You're as a baseball fan, they're like, we're going to quintuple size of this thing. We're not going to supersize this baseball game. We're going to quintuple it because after 14 innings, that's a game and a half that you got there for the low price of a $7 ticket for general admission. I'm a big fan of that. You know what else I'm a big fan of? They sell beer at FIU Stadium. $9 for the, what do they call it? The Sunblazer Lager. Big fan of that. $9 because you know what? Across town over at Loandepot Park, when the Marlins hosted the Atlanta Braves, hallelujah. The Marlins had the roof open at loandepot Park. It was a beautiful day for baseball, but unfortunately the Braves offense went missing. They lost 5-1. But that wasn't even the low light of that game. The low light was paying $17 for a lager. $17. I mean, you can buy, I think you can go to like your local supermarket or CVS or something, get like a 20 case of Blue Moon for like $22. And at your amazing local Major League Baseball stadium, you have the honor to pay through the nose for a baseball game. And then the honor to pay $17 for a beer. By the way, this doesn't include tax. I enjoy talking to our next guest about affordable baseball outings for you, the family, a date that won't stress you out, and you might even have some money left over to supersize your next meal. This week, we are happy to be joined by our special guest, Dr. Megan Byrd, a certified mental performance consultant. Dr. Byrd, welcome to Last Call Baseball.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk baseball and psychology and all the things.
You've lived in a lot of different places, so I'm going to ask you, what state is the best to be in? Ohio, Kentucky,
Oh
West
gosh.
Virginia, or in a love state of mind?
Oh gosh. I feel like I've lived in a lot of places, but Kentucky is home and I find myself like wanting to go back there the most. So I'm gonna say Kentucky.
The Commonwealth of Kentucky over a love state of mind?
Yeah, but I guess that's gonna make me sound kind of heartless, but yeah, I would go with it. The
Excellent.
bluegrass has my heart.
I actually love the Kentucky Wildcats basketball team, and it's been obviously a
Mhm.
very weird past 2 weeks with, John Calipari leaving and Mark Pope coming back. But I have never been to a game in Rupp Arena, which is
Oh,
like
you
on
gotta go.
my bucket list, my to-do list.
Yeah, you gotta go. I'd say sports bucket list, Rupp Arena, and then if you've never been to a football game at West Virginia University at Mile and Push Guard, nothing like country roads with all those people. It's so great.
I'll have to put that up there. Thanks for
Yeah,
that.
add it to your bucket list for sure.
I love sports. And I don't think anyone besides like a professional would say they love psychology or psychiatry, but it's unbelievably important. I think over the past, I would say 15 odd years, there has been a complete shift of just, excuse me for the phrase, but like man up and just go up there, with the bat or the basketball or the softball bat. A lot of teams are employing psychologists, psychiatrists to help improve what do they call it, sports performance.
Hmm.
When did you realize I can combine as a living both sports and psychology?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was a psychology major in undergrad, and I took an elective that was sports writing, and I loved that class so much. Then I started writing for my school newspaper. And as I was writing, the stories that I loved the most to write and to interview athletes about game stories, whatever. Anybody can write about a box score and strategy, but the stories about the athletes themselves and their journey to get to college athletics, talking about their families, talking about really just like the everyday like trial and tribulations of sport was just so fascinating. And then I was actually registering for classes and they had a sports psych elective and I couldn't take it because it was like an upper level class and I think I was like a sophomore at the time. And so I didn't even know that field existed. And it was almost like this like perfect happenstance of my love of sports, of being from Kentucky, obviously basketball has been like in my blood forever. And then growing up close to Cincinnati, such like an amazing baseball town. So when I realized that there was the psychology of sport and that the job was working with performers and athletes and just helping them with their mental game, I was like, this is the most perfect job in the entire world. So then I went to grad school and then grad school again and then here I am.
That's funny you're saying grad school and grad school again. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
that is no joke earning a PhD or an MD or what do the lawyers earn? It doesn't matter. Who cares?
A JD. Yeah,
No,
JD.
JD is like no, because then they have a D,
Oh,
the one above
right.
that, so you can actually teach.
Yeah, no, thank you. Well, I
Who
do that. So I don't know why I said no, thank you, because I did do that, but yeah, it's a lot.
now you currently one of your many hats that you wear is as the I would say correct me if I'm wrong like the sports psychologist for the entire Georgia Southern University athletic program. Like how that's an amazing position to have. It's also, I think it's a privilege as well, because you have these young
Oh,
men and women
absolutely.
coming to you with
Hmm.
issues and they also want to improve. Like how have you found that role?
Yeah, I think your word is so perfect. It's such a privilege. I never take for granted getting to sit across from an athlete, a performer, a student, because one of my hats is as a teacher and a supervisor. And getting in like the proverbial ditch with people and helping them get out of it and then trusting you with things that they certainly don't have to is nothing, it's never anything that I take for granted. And I work really hard for athletes to understand what my role is and that I support them and this unconditional positive regard I have for all of them. And they're honestly just such impressive humans too. I think people in the sport world and out of the sport world, I think don't always recognize the pressure that our student athletes are under. They have all the things that a college student has, plus athletics, plus they're visible. They always have to be on. They can't just let loose in the same way that our college students can when they're stressed out because there's always cameras on them, especially with our bigger schools and small cities. And so it's a job that comes with a lot of privilege, and a job that comes with its own stress. But I have the best job in the whole world. I say that all the time. Luckily, I don't have to do it alone. So we have a team at Georgia Southern, a mental performance team, which includes myself, another sports psych person, a licensed counselor, our sports medicine director, and then a physician. And so we have this team of professionals to kind of help our athletes when they're going through different things and making sure that we're getting them the best care that we can. So it's a lot of athletes, but luckily we have a team and we do, I think, a pretty good job of making sure they're taken care of.
I think that really resonated with me when you said people don't realize how much pressure these college athletes are under. And I didn't realize that until I think you had just said it, because this past weekend I went to go see a college baseball game and I
Mm-hmm.
was there on a Friday night. But as any college baseball series, whether it's softball, whatever, it's the whole weekend. These young men and women are there from 7 o'clock until, no, not even from 7. They're there hours before.
Probably 2 o'clock, most of them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Then they're there until afterwards. They have to come right back in the afternoon for the afternoon game on Saturday. Then they have to come right back Sunday. I mean, I chose as a fan, I'm no longer in college, to be like, oh, I want to go support this team. It's fun. I'm here for 3.5 hours and I'm gone. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, these are young men and women. When I look back, I'm like, I wouldn't have been able to make that commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one weekend. And then you add in the stress of the travel, the stress with your girlfriend, with your boyfriend, with your parents. I'm in awe with some of these college athletes, and especially having talked to other professionals in college baseball, how at least when it comes to college baseball, they don't even have full scholarships, which for me just
Right.
blows my mind. And
Mm-hmm.
all this leading to, where do you find the schism? Not the schism, but where is the difference between a coach who, since we're talking about baseball, might help you with the swing, might help you with the glove or the way you move or how you set yourself up, to the psychology part? Is that just like being a psychologist, or do you also try to help them for you? Of course, you are helping them for the performance, but I'm trying to understand where the that coaching part and then the actual
Mm-hmm.
clinical part starts detangling.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the question in itself is complicated because I think it's complicated. And so I think for a lot of people, that's a confusing line. And so at Georgia Southern, we separate our clinical from our mental performance. Part of that is due to like state licensure and then what makes sense in terms of care. But really, I think sports psych is almost like a liaison. I mean, you mentioned earlier about like these phrases of like man up. I think it's a lot easier for some of our athletes to say, well, I'll go talk to the sports psych person, but I don't want to go see a counselor or a therapist. And so it's almost like this gateway of like getting help. So whatever we can do to get people in the door. And I think that's where in sports psych, you'll see people at practices, on the bench and the dugout, on the sidelines. And so you have this person that becomes embedded in your team. And so this trust isn't built overnight, but it's built over prolonged engagement and just being around. And I always say like 90% of my job is just showing up. I think for most people, showing up is an underrated skill. But I think the line becomes when the stressor, whatever it is, starts to interfere with outside of sport and it becomes a daily living activity issue. So similar to like an injury, if they can't function in class, if they are having trouble in their relationships and it's spreading outside of the baseball, then that would definitely be the line into potentially clinical care. And then once we start getting into mental health disorders, that's going to be much more clinical than sports psych or performance. So when we're talking about pretty severe depression or anxiety or eating disorders or substance abuse, that would all fall into the line of clinical. So thinking about like where coaching comes into play, I think our coaches have to be psychologists in some way because they're dealing with things on the road, and then they're obviously with the players much more frequently. But also, I think the benefit is that they don't have to be. So having a sports psych on your staff, you can alleviate some of these stressors from the coaches and the athletic trainers and the strength coaches who also just have these unbearable schedules. When athletics is in full swing, they're also wearing 15 different hats. And so knowing if you've got a guy who's really struggling at the plate, the coach can say, like, I can help you with the technical piece, but this seems to be maybe something more in your brain. Let's have you work with Megan or someone else. And then that way it's almost like the coach can focus on those other aspects.
That's a good point where a lot of times when in baseball, whether they're at the high school level all the way up to the majors, where if you're watching TV, sometimes a guy's in a slump, they've had one hit over the past 2 weeks, and they always you always hear this more or less this different variations of this phrase of the manager called him in the office and they had just a 5-10 minute conversation and just talked about how are you doing? Like they don't even talk about. So you're right. Like coaches have to be psychologists of these players.
Yeah, and then you've got all these different personalities too, and knowing what guys can you push when they're in a slump, what guys need more comforting when they're in a slump. How do you build their confidence? How do you motivate them? How do they respond to feedback? Do they like feedback in front of other people? Do they like feedback more in a private setting? And so it's just all of these things. And you've got a baseball team with 50 guys, and that's a lot of work for one person to manage all of that at once.
All right, Dr. Byrd, I want some feedback on a big softball game I have next weekend. What can you tell me to improve my performance that I haven't practiced? I've only done a little bit of running, but that's it. What do you think I should do?
For me, I think one of the most underrated skills is being able to regulate your emotions. If you can regulate how you are acting, then I think the rest can fall into place. So if you're someone who if you get down in the count, that your emotions are going to start to take over, you're going to stop thinking, is just a matter of like acknowledging, like, I'm okay, this is okay, I know what I'm doing, and bringing our emotions in line with reality or where we are. So guys or girls or any sport for that matter who know like refs and umpires, they have a hard time letting bad calls go. Then it's really just about regulating their emotion and staying present and where they are as best they can. So I think like one pitch at a time is kind of cliche, but it's a saying because it works. Of you can't get the last pitch back and you can't predict 2 pitches ahead. So the only thing that you can control right now is the right now.
I want to say on that word regulate. I had seen that you had highlighted or something a paper on a British paper that was published on the effects of training or what have you of young athletes doing things too early in the morning. Why do we still force kids to go to school at 8 a.m.? You know how often hello, I know people can't see, but there's a cat. There you go. There's someone who has no problems regulating or sleeping at any time of the day. A cat.
No problem whatsoever. She's just climbing around. Sorry about that.
Why do we still do that? Why does I don't know the Georgia Southern schedule, but I'm pretty sure they offer like Psych 101 at 7:30 in the morning.
Yes. Oh man. I think if you asked any of the athletes that I work with, what's the thing I ask them the most? It's always how many hours of sleep did you get last night? And then the follow-up, what kind of quality was your sleep? If you're not sleeping well, you don't think well, you can't regulate your emotions, you're not going to have an appetite, it's going to be all over the place, you're more likely to get injured, you're more likely to make a mistake, you're more likely to be a perfectionist. I mean, the list goes on and on of all of the dangers of not being good at sleeping. And so I don't know why we do. And even now with like conference, you don't know, but you really opened up a wound for me here, because with conference realignment, you're going to have baseball teams traveling across the country to play 3 games and go back. their sleep schedule, when we start crossing time zones, it's just going to be erratic. And I don't like to be very doom and gloom all the time, but I just can't help but think that injuries are going to go up. I can't help but think that some of these mental health things are going to go up because when we can't regulate our sleep, we can't do much of anything else.
I completely agree with you. I wish I remember who said this, but I listened to a podcast a while ago saying that basically sleep is the superpower.
It is 100%. It's the most free performance enhancement skill that anyone can take or do. So, I guess your other question too, you want to get better at softball, make sure that you're sleeping because you can't do anything else if you're not.
That's true. And even if I fail and strike out 5 times, at least I look good because I don't have bags under my eyes.
And you'll be well rested. So
Exactly.
that's a win in my book.
I don't mean for you to answer for all these people, but continuing on the sleep thing and athletes and performance in anything, why is it that people show off and say, I wake up every day at 3:15 in the morning and I journal and I meditate and I go walk my cat? It's like,
Right. The cold
what's
plunge.
the
Yeah.
point? I really don't understand what the point of that, except maybe I don't know. What is your take on
Yeah,
that?
I think part of it is just this culture of hustle of everyone thinking like you have to keep doing more and more. And if you're sleeping in till 6:30, like you're wasting all of this time. And it's like, no, because I think it's so much of like this like badge of honor that people think come with like working out in the morning, but your workout at 10 p.m. counts just the same as that person who worked out at 4 a.m. Now there's literature to suggest body changes are happening differently, sure. And I get all of that, but getting up at 5 a.m. to work out at the expense of getting 7 or 8 hours of sleep, just no one will ever convince me that that's worth it. But I think it's just this culture of what people think it takes to get ahead versus what it actually takes, I think are just very different sometimes.
That made me think what people used to show off 20 years ago on how much they worked, how late they worked. Oh, I'm working 9 hours
Mm-hmm.
a day. I'm working 13 hours a day. I'm billing 73 hours a week. Now it's how early you wake up. That's the way it's
Mm-hmm.
a professional flex. And it is so annoying.
Very incredibly. We're on the same page 100% with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't want to know what time people woke up. I want to know how many hours of sleep you got.
Yeah, I want to see your what's that the Whoop watch or whatever thing
Oh,
that
yeah.
does, tracks your sleep time. Like, oh, I got really crappy
Yeah.
sleep today.
But even with that, I think there's definitely a place for technology in these kinds of things. But even what a watch can't tell you is if you feel rested. And so I think sometimes people get maybe a little caught up in some of their technology and some of the wearables. So some guys will say like, "Oh, I feel like crap," but my like watch says I got 8 hours. But if you feel like crap, the most like scientific term, then that outweighs how much sleep that you got. So we need to readjust somewhere, either what time you're going to bed, what time you're waking up, how often you're waking up, the temperature of your room, how dark it is in your room. So there are things that you can do to fix your sleep once you figure out what seems to be the issue with falling or staying asleep.
I'm a big proponent of sleep. And as a quasi professional who took 2 psychology courses in undergrad, I do want to say you can't make up sleep. You can have
Right.
5 bad days and you can have one day that you sleep for 10 hours. You have to consistently get that good sleep in
Mm-hmm.
because you're like, oh, what's the point of sleeping? I've heard some people say that. It's like you can't just have one day and expect to feel like
Right.
Superman or Superwoman.
Right. Yeah. And it'll catch up. A lack of sleep will catch up very quickly to you.
I want to thank, I forget his name because it was a long time ago, my professor in, I think it was like the psychology of dreams. And he used to be
Mm.
like a consultant for the Miami Police Department because, they have those terrible shifts,
Oh,
the
right.
night
Yeah,
shift. And a lot of
absolutely.
those
Yeah.
guys had a
Swing
lot of
shift
health
too.
issues
Mm-hmm.
because of their messed up sleep.
Yeah, absolutely.
One more question about sleep. If we can also bring in another special guest, the champion of sleep, your cat that just came on screen. How do cats help you in whether it's psychologically or even sleeping?
Yeah, I think pets in general just are such a good reminder of like staying present. And sometimes I think we take things maybe a bit too seriously. And I'm not trying to say that there aren't serious things, but striking out in baseball is not the worst thing to happen. And so I think sometimes just a reminder of maybe perspective. And in the moment, it is the worst thing, but I think sometimes just having something else that isn't another person that's going to ask you about how the game went, or someone else who's not going to ask you about like your plans, your future plans, I think can be really helpful. And then just like petting is just, it's such a nice, like continuous action that I think really helps people unwind. And then there's research to suggest that cat purring actually can be helpful for all kinds of things.
Healing of the bones as well.
Yeah,
So
I've heard
if
that.
you
Yeah, I've
break an
heard that.
ankle, because I'm guessing you used to be a basketball player, whether it was in high school or college, you could have just put a cat on your ankle and you would have been right
Yeah.
back. Coach, put me in. I got it.
Right. That's, I think people can make the argument for having multiple cats. You just lay in cat piles, I guess, and see how that works.
That
Athletic training rooms should have cats, I guess, for that too.
Yeah, they should. It just yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. The cats just have to watch out with their tails because
Yeah,
God
for
forbid.
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Bird, we don't want to take up too much of your time. We're certainly appreciative, but I want to ask you a couple of fun questions I like to ask all my guests.
Okay.
If we did the unthinkable and took you away from Georgia Southern University's athletic program, maybe for a day, maybe for 10 years, and
Hmm.
crowned you as the new general manager of your beloved Cincinnati Reds, what's
Yes.
one or two things you would do with your powers? Remember, you're the general manager. You can basically do anything you want. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going
Yeah.
to trade this player. you can change concession stands,
Hmm.
anything you want. What would you do, Dr. Bird?
Oh man. Okay. Such a great question. I love this so much. It's also a little frightening to have like that unwieldy power. The first thing that I would do, which I guess is connected to our conversation, is I think all professional teams and all college teams should have a nap room for athletes to take naps, because napping is wonderful. I'm a big proponent, but have it like super stocked with maybe cats, sleep masks, sound machines, massage chairs, those kinds. I also would bring Joey Votto back immediately. That would probably be step number two. And then step number three is, I feel like something about ticket prices or having like a free game every couple of months or something. I just feel like sometimes sports become inaccessible based on cost. I think some parks do a really nice job of that. And so a way to like connect to the community. I know professional teams and college teams do so much good work in their communities and they're already doing a lot, but I think just you can always ramp up how much you give back to your communities.
As a self-appointed senior consultant to General Manager Bird, I agree with you. And it would be now that you bring that up, you're always reminded of some of the tech companies out west where they have these nap rooms. But I would love
Hmm.
to actually read a study report of the perception of people who actually use it. Does that
Right.
come up in their annual review? Because you're kind of like,
Yeah.
should I be sleeping when I'm there working eight,
Hmm.
10 hours, 13 hours a day? That would be interesting. And of course,
Oh yeah, for sure. I
even
think that's interesting too, because even with everything comes back to sleep and napping, but even when like in this hustle culture that we talked about, because when I tell athletes to take a nap, some of them have very like visceral reactions of like that it's lazy, or that they could be doing something else. And so I think part of my job too is getting them to like rethink how they think about relaxing and taking a nap, that doing a nap is sometimes going to be better for you than spending 4 more hours in the cage when your body is just already shot and done and tired, and you're frustrated and you're angry. Sometimes you just need to go home and go to sleep.
and Leonardo da Vinci took naps. If
And
he
look what he created.
exactly,
So
and if he had been here, he'd also would have been hitting 300 for Georgia Southern University.
yeah, probably.
I do see some teams because unfortunately, I'm on their emailing list because for some reason or other, I, bought tickets from them. It's always the bad teams that have not the bad teams that are in a bad season that then
Hmm.
offer you that family four pack, four tickets for
Hmm.
$40 or $80 and everyone gets a drink and a hot dog. That's it. But the teams that are having good seasons, they don't offer any of that stuff.
Right.
And it's frustrating
Right.
because, and that's why I'm a big proponent of this is not so much a Major League Baseball podcast. This is just baseball. And that's why I
Hmm.
love minor league baseball. They know their
The
bread and butter.
best.
College
Yes.
baseball, I've gone to games that cost 7, 10, nothing more than $20, from
Hmm.
$7 to $20. And even then they'll have, for example, shout out to the Miami University of Miami Hurricanes baseball program. They have, I believe it's called 3-for-1 special where or 3 for 10, you get like 3 hot dogs for $10 and a ticket. But the thing is, it encourages you to come to the stadium, and
Exactly.
the owners of Major League Baseball are like, let's bring that
Can't do
every
it.
out.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, it's sad because then people keep scratching their head is like, why aren't these young kids playing baseball? Why?
Mhm.
Because they can't go
Mhm.
see the great teams, and it's expensive. It's just as expensive as ice hockey or
Oh yeah,
carriaging,
absolutely.
horse jumping, all that stuff. So yes, I completely
Yeah.
agree. I think that I'm going to put you in as a
Thank you.
dark horse candidate
Thank
for the
you.
GM of the Cincinnati Reds. And lastly, I know, like you just said, the college baseball athletes, everyone has to travel sometimes, somehow, for some reason. And we always want to know, we don't always have to go on the internet, whatever, to find good places to eat when we go there. So when we're in the great state of Georgia and in the beautiful
Mhm.
city of Savannah, what's a couple of places that you love going to get a drink, a coffee, or just food in general?
Yeah, Savannah has such great food. I am a big fan of kind of like hole in the wall places. So there's Bernie's Oyster House, which is right on the water. They have really great oysters. They have great like happy hour deals. So that's definitely one. One of my favorite restaurants is the Gray, which was an old bus terminal that's been turned into a restaurant. So it has such a cool vibe. And the chef there has just such a wonderful story. It's great. You really can't go wrong really with anywhere in Savannah, but those would definitely be like my top two places when people come to visit. And then really anything that's on a roof. I think there's just something about eating on a roof that even if the food, not saying it isn't, but even if the food isn't great, it just becomes better because you're like have such great views. And then I would say for food, in a roundabout way, is the Savannah Bananas game, just because your tickets come with free food. And there's really nothing better than a baseball game and food together.
Yeah, Savannah Bananas, they know their bread and butter. And I
Hmm.
don't know if you've had a chance to go to a game. I have yet
I
to.
have. Oh, it's so fun.
And they went on a tour. I think it was during the
Hmm.
winter time. They
Hmm.
went Major League Baseball stadiums and they sold out
Selling them out.
everywhere. And
Hmm.
they got whatever it is, they got it going on.
Oh yeah. It turns out you can have fun in baseball after all, and people will come watch.
Whenever I think about Savannah, I also think about, I don't know, is Charleston considered like a rival to Savannah? I don't know.
I don't think so. I think that they're so close that when people come vacation down here, I think they do both a lot of the times because they're so drivable. They might be rivals. I don't know. Maybe.
Savannah, and I'm sure this is the same thing for Charleston, or maybe I'm getting the cities mixed up, but the whole thing about every 6 inches or every 6 feet, like there's a dead body all through, like not like like getting killed, but just
Right.
cemeteries, and it's kind of like freaky. But I'm sure you could say the exact same thing for Charleston. It's a city that's
Hmm.
400 years old, but
Yes.
I don't know why. Like I like Savannah, but I really like Charleston. I feel like there's like more to do in Charleston than there is
Hmm.
in Savannah, because I think you within 5 minutes you're like in the residential area of Savannah
Yep.
when you're driving. What is it, west or north or what? I forget the directional part of Savannah, but I do love Savannah.
Yeah, it's nice. There's a lot of ghost tours, so there's something to what you're saying for sure. I've
We
done multiple. They're very fun, but
are
also
you,
kind of freaky.
why would you do that?
Why not?
Have you not seen those shows like what was it, like on TLC, where everyone, it's always the same thing. The family goes to a tour at plantation. They come
Hmm.
back and all of a sudden little Johnny can't sleep because they brought a ghost back from the
Yeah.
plantation. That's why I never do those plantation tours. I'm like, I'm sure
Oh,
those houses are
yeah.
beautiful. I'll watch it. I'll see them
Yeah.
on YouTube.
Hmm.
I don't want a ghost to come back and be right
Yeah,
with
I
me.
would stay away from those ones too. I guess the graveyard ones, I guess I'm more okay with those for some reason. At least you know what you're getting into and it's not a mystery anymore. So you know where the dirty secrets of Savannah are.
Okay. I'm still not going to go, but I agree with you. Yeah. So and
They're
then if you
fair.
go with your cat, they can fight off because they can see into
They
the
can
next
sense
world.
it.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
absolutely.
Cats love cats, and they have. I don't even know if they have a cat cafe in Savannah.
There is a cat
Okay,
cafe in
well, I have to go
Savannah.
check that out. I
Hmm.
have to go check it out.
Yep.
All these two places, the Gray and where's
The
the other one?
Gray and Bernie's Oyster House.
Bernie's Oyster House, the Gray, Savannah
Hmm.
Cat Cafe, and the Savannah
Hmm.
Bananas.
Yeah, can't go wrong. It's a
I'm
perfect
gonna.
day. And then
That
come
sounds like
to
a great
Statesboro
weekend.
and head up a Georgia Southern baseball game. You won't be
Absolutely.
disappointed.
Absolutely. Dr. Byrd, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Let us know where we can find you, and obviously some of your work for as a consultant, and also for Georgia Southern University.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a sports psych master's program at Georgia Southern. I'm biased, but I think it's one of the best in the country. So if you're interested in learning more about the field or the profession or what it looks like, definitely check that out. And then you can find me on Twitter at Megan_Byrd23. And then Georgia Southern Athletics, visit them too, because they got a lot of cool stuff going on right now.
And a lot of good, affordable tickets for you and the family.
Yes, 100%. Mm-hmm. And then I would also say in Statesboro, we have a USL League One soccer team, a professional team in town. They just won a game in the Open Cup yesterday, so they're on a roll too. And cheap tickets, very accessible. The name of the game, sports for everyone.
Thanks to Dr. Byrd and her cat who joined us this week. At the top of the show, I was talking about beer, and I still love having a good drink while I'm thinking about the podcast, while I'm dreaming about the podcast, while I'm dreaming about the next game I'm attend. And for this episode, I've been drinking a barrel-aged Lagerbier. Beer, again, I don't speak German. It's a Munich-style Helles from a good American local brewery called Barrique Brewing and Blending in Nashville, Tennessee. Is drinking beer healthy? I don't think so. I've been trying to lose weight, and that's one of the things that people tell you to cut out, the beers, to eat clean, cut out beer. I think I'm going to start switching to straight liquor in the future. There's no reason to get drunk, but there's also no reason not to enjoy a nice, delicious drink. And this is a delicious drink. And I'm thankful that I can still have a beer or two and be able to drink safely at home without having to pay $17 for this beer. Thanks for listening to Last Call Baseball. Be great and get home safe.